It's all covered in today's China Truths.
When the world thought Cambodia was launching a nationwide anti-scam campaign, few knew what was really happening behind the scenes. Welcome back to China Truths. Today we're covering the latest updates from Cambodia, a country that's been making headlines these past few days. It wasn't Cambodia's decision to storm the compounds. It was pressure from Seoul. For months, South Korea had been demanding answers. Hundreds of their citizens trapped in cyber slavery zones across Cambodia's special economic areas, territories reportedly influenced by Chinese-linked networks and protected by powerful Cambodian patrons. These weren't random scam centers. They were mini-states inside Cambodia, run like private kingdoms. Chinese bosses at the top, Cambodian protectors in parliament, and a wall of silence maintained by money and fear. When South Korean families went public, demanding action, diplomacy turned into confrontation. Seoul quietly deployed intelligence teams and special forces, pressuring Phnom Penh to open its borders, not for trade but for rescue. Inside those guarded compounds, victims weren't just deceived, they were trapped. Passports locked in vaults, phones confiscated, their lives turned into profit charts. Anyone who tried to flee faced threats, ransom demands, or disappearance. For years, these zones operated under the illusion of development projects, innovation parks, or digital service hubs. In reality, they were cyber exploitation sites, reportedly protected by Chinese business interests and local power brokers, laundering billions through crypto and underground financial channels reaching as far as Hong Kong. Local officials often looked the other way. Some even attended banquets, smiling for photos beside those who built empires on human suffering. But now the illusion is cracking. South Korea's intervention has exposed the dark symbiosis between Cambodia's political elite and transnational criminal industries. What began as a diplomatic request has turned into a regional showdown. Seoul's mission to rescue its citizens from compounds the Cambodian police once hesitated to approach. This isn't just about human trafficking or online scams. It's about a country within a country, protected by power, money, and silence, until foreign pressure forced the gates open. And behind those gates, the truth is darker than anyone imagined. It began not with sirens, but with silence. While headlines spoke of a Cambodian anti-scam crackdown, the real trigger came from Seoul. Behind closed doors, South Korean diplomats were demanding something extraordinary: permission to send police and special forces into Cambodia. Their mission: to find and rescue South Korean citizens trapped in cyber slavery compounds, deep inside zones that had long been under the influence of powerful interests. These weren't just office parks, they were miniature city-states built on fear and money, places where Chinese syndicates ran entire operations with local political protection. Politicians smiled at ribbon cuttings while workers screamed behind locked steel doors. For years, these special zones operated untouched. Licenses were granted, land titles approved, and taxes quietly collected. In return, silence was maintained. The system worked until South Korea broke it. When desperate families began publishing videos of missing loved ones, voices trembling from Seoul to Busan, pressure built fast. The South Korean government could no longer ignore the hundreds of citizens trafficked and enslaved in Cambodia's so-called digital parks. That's when negotiations turned into confrontation. Seoul gave Phnom Penh a choice: open the gates or face diplomatic fallout. What followed wasn't a Cambodian-led crackdown. It was a coordinated collaboration. Under mounting pressure, Cambodia allowed limited entry for South Korean task units, escorted by local police, to infiltrate the compounds. Inside, the truth was undeniable. Rows of dormitories with barred windows, passports stacked in plastic bins, phone farms buzzing under fluorescent lights, scripts printed in simplified Chinese, Korean, Thai, and Vietnamese, all designed to exploit victims online. The South Korean teams didn't come for arrests. They came for rescue. Their first mission is to separate victims from guards, document evidence, and get their citizens out alive. But it wasn't easy. Many of these compounds were protected by local officials who had benefited from the system for years. Power was cut the moment foreign teams approached. Servers were wiped, evidence destroyed. Every compound was a fortress, and every escape felt like a miracle. In the aftermath, the illusion of development zones began to crumble. What the world saw as innovation parks were, in truth, Chinese-run enclaves operating within Cambodian territory, with complex political and financial ties that reach from local governors to national ministries. Now, as Seoul and Phnom Penh exchange polite smiles for the cameras, the deeper question remains: who allowed this empire to exist in the first place? Because this story isn't about a single rescue. It's about a system of protection and silence, built by power and profit, and foreign influences that paid for it. South Korea's intervention has ripped that curtain wide open. And behind it stands a shadow economy, one that traded human lives for influence and built its walls high enough to hide the screams. The message to Beijing is clear. Observers and advocates are calling for transparency and accountability, to investigate the Chinese-linked entities behind these crimes, freeze illicit assets, cooperate on extradition requests, and share financial data so victims can recover their money. These are not diplomatic gestures. They are the measures of justice. If meaningful action does not follow, critics warn that silence could be interpreted as tolerance. Authorities and experts are also urging a crackdown on the entire broker ecosystem that feeds these compounds. WeChat recruitment funnels, secretive investment groups, and underground money transfer networks must be dismantled. Payment providers that disguise illicit revenue as consulting or logistics should face prosecution. Anything less is a show for millions across Southeast Asia. Public safety is not for rent. A park that requires fences and locked dormitories is not a park. It is a prison disguised as progress. The law must establish clear safeguards: real ownership disclosure, independent audits, surprise inspections, wage protection funds, and felony penalties for holding passports or restricting freedom. Transparency should be rewarded, secrecy penalized. No ribbon cutting until compliance passes inspection. The economy must shift from gala to ledger. Every promise must have a receipt, and every receipt must withstand scrutiny. Transparency isn't propaganda, it's survival. This is not simply a story about Chinese families or foreign workers. It's about how transnational criminal models exploit loopholes and thrive under weak oversight. Many of the imprisoned workers, including Chinese nationals, are victims. The masterminds who launder identities and profits are the real criminals. The crackdown in Cambodia, driven by diplomatic cooperation and pressure from the South Korean government, has sent a clear message. The lights are coming on. Gates that once opened for buses now hold names. Wallets once thought untouchable now flash on screens tracked by authorities. The scripts once used for scams now read like confessions. The season has changed. Behavior must change too. Transparency or downfall. Facts speak louder than words. Arrests, extraditions, and prosecutions are already underway. The international community, from Seoul to Washington, is pushing for real measures: travel warnings, financial blacklists, and sanctions on laundering networks. This is no longer talk. It's a global effort to follow the money. Finally, regional governments must act decisively, as South Korea has. Break the chain of fraud, protect their people, and prosecute the masterminds. If Southeast Asia wants peace, it must act together. The fraud model will collapse when justice is enforced. Justice is not measured by words, but by speed. When citizens are lured into foreign-controlled compounds in Cambodia, every passing hour decides whether they live or vanish. The question is simple: will their governments act or stay silent? Some nations issue statements, others take action, but silence only feeds the traffickers. Justice delayed is justice denied, and every delay costs another family hope. The measure of a nation is not its wealth or power, but how fiercely it protects its people when they are trapped abroad. Those who look away become complicit in suffering, while those who act become the light that breaks the cages. South Korea has shown what responsibility looks like. When its citizens were trapped, Seoul didn't wait for outrage. It sent investigators, demanded cooperation, and pushed Cambodia into action. Under that pressure, the gates opened, victims were rescued, and the network began to collapse. That is what real justice means. Not speeches, but decisive movement. Every government, with citizens still imprisoned, must do the same. Follow the money, bring people home, and dismantle the system that profits from despair. The longer they hesitate, the darker the shadow grows. Justice is not a speech, it's a deadline. It is time for nations, communities, and ordinary people to act together. Justice cannot live in silence, and truth cannot breathe in darkness. When governments cooperate, when journalists keep asking questions, and when citizens refuse to look away, the walls of corruption and cruelty begin to crack. Each action, a report, a rescue, a voice raised online, pushes the truth closer to daylight. Together we can expose those who profit from fear and free those who have been forgotten behind locked doors. Let every government remember, justice is not a privilege, it is a duty. And when truth finally stands in the open, life itself becomes fairer, safer, and brighter for all. Let us learn from South Korea, a nation that acted swiftly when its people were in danger. They didn't wait for speeches or headlines. They took real action, showing that justice is proven by deeds, not words. Now it's our turn to stand together and protect our own citizens before more lives are lost and more families fall into despair. Every step we take, every voice we raise, becomes a spark of change that pushes back the darkness. If South Korea can act with determination to defend its people, so can we. Justice begins when we stop waiting and choose to act today.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We will keep reporting on the COVID surge in China, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get the latest videos. And thank you for tuning in.